Hey everybody, before I start this week's episode, I just want to talk to you about Elias Software. Elias Software is providing high-quality tools and services, bridging the gaps between game developers, sound designers, and music composers. With a modern and fast workflow and deep game engine integration, Elias audio tools enable unprecedented creative control. If you're looking for real-time audio feedback for music and sound effects for your game, you want to check eliassoftware.com and get on with what's hot right now. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Unchained, the number one podcast about game development and the lifestyle thereof. I am here with my special guest. I don't know your last name. Hawken. How are you doing, Hawken?
I'm good, Brandon. My last name is Miller, so I have a very uncommon first name but a very common last name.
That's great, man. So that is your real name then, Hawken. I thought it was some kind of code name. It's really cool, dude. But this is the part of the podcast actually where I let the guests, such as yourself, introduce your viewers out there, who you are, where you've been, where you're heading.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Hawken Miller. I am a journalist by trade. I am incidentally looking at reporting on the video game and esports industry. I've graduated from USC in 2019 and interned at the Washington Post. And while I was there, I worked for their new video game vertical launcher. And I've also been writing for a healthcare and biotech company covering rare diseases called Bio News Services. So I do have a very large breadth of issues that I do cover. And, you know, I've always been into video games from a young age. It's definitely helped me through having Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy and not being able to participate physically with other kids. And so it's been a great way for me to stay connected with my friends and a way for me to be competitive and just hang out with them. And so that's a little bit about my story and where I'm at right now.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing. You know, the last, there's still a long ways to go for the game industry to kind of be more inclusive for players. I think the last big news that I've heard was from Naughty Dog with maybe their Last of Us 2 being a little bit more conscious of other players. But that is far and few in between. Can you kind of share a little bit more of that background and what you had to like go through to play these games, because you found it as an escape too, right? But like the industry wasn't ever really so accommodating to that until recently.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that. I know another game that I came across that has a lot of accessibility options is Gears of War. I think they're on 5 now, but they were great with some games you have to button mash, and that's kind of a little bit difficult. So instead, you got to hold the button down to complete an action or something like that. So those are small things that are very helpful. So in my own life, I can still use my hands and arms normally. So thankfully, it hasn't been too much of an impact for me. But I do know people that are quadriplegics or have lost, arms and just can't move as well. It definitely is difficult to play video games. I know we have come a long ways. Eye tracker technology has been very helpful for those people. I'm not sure if you're familiar with a device called a quad stick, but it allows users to basically use their mouth and blow into different tubes and do different actions through that. So those two things have been nice, but those kind of have been like independent, not related to game developers. And I mean, to me, it makes sense why. I mean, there aren't as many people with disabilities playing the games to begin with, so they have less of an incentive to put those interfaces or accessibility features in. But like you said, I think they're doing a better job of that right now.
Yeah, driving points in the past 6 months more. I feel like, at least in the news, there's more conversations about this, is because, well, the pandemic, right? If newsflash, you don't know about that, has kind of forced people to be in their homes and to find their escape through the internet and games and movies, right? There's no coincidence here that the stocks for these tech companies are going up, because more people are turning to this, something that you've been turned to many times for many years, and finally are emphasizing, like, hey, this is a great way to kind of kill time and be a part of society, but at the same time, it's not set up for everyone just yet. And so now there seems to be a light kind of shining on to this particular subject. Do you feel that that's me based on intuition and just scoping? Is that kind of true?
Definitely. I think I did write a story about Microsoft and kind of their accessibility focus. And so they released the adaptive controller for Xbox in 2018. And so, I mean, I think it really has to do with, you have to have people with disabilities working in these different places, because if you don't have a disability, you're not going to understand that perspective, and you're not going to create a mechanic or create something within the game that could help someone with a disability, get through that game or get through whatever challenge that they're faced in the game. So I think, hiring more people with disabilities is definitely going to improve that. And I think that's what's helpful for Microsoft, at least for their inclusive tech lab. They have people with disabilities working there. And so it starts from having a diverse group of people, different ideas, and then also with different abilities, and programming that into the game from the beginning.
Yeah, the push of diversity seems like, when we have a conversation with it seems very obvious, but very few studios actually do them. And a lot of it is not just completely trying to ignore. It's just the game development cycle is so rushed, where every second kind of feels like you're on your last salary paycheck, right? Where it feels like other things take priority, where where in a way you're shutting down the very people that are actually supporting your game, right? So it's a balancing thing. And I think that's the immaturity of the industry a bit, where we're still figuring things out as we go. Do you feel like other entertainment industry are handling it a little bit better? And what advice do you think could carry over to the game industry that can help with the transitioning?
Yeah, and I'm not super focused on the entertainment industry, but what I can say is I think that the same problem is across both mediums. I don't know how often you see movies or TV characters with a disability now. That is improving, and I think it's becoming more proportional to the amount of people with disabilities. And you have to understand, it's not like half of people in the US have a disability. It's a little bit less than that. So you have to think about that. But proportionally, it's still not where it should be. But you have shows like having someone with cerebral palsy that are represented, and people in wheelchairs that are represented. Glee, for example, they had one of the characters in a wheelchair. However, he wasn't actually paralyzed. So that might have been a problem in and of itself. But I think you see that more and more. I actually watched, I did a review for a movie about someone with Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy, and Paul Rudd was in it. So that gave a lot of good press to that issue, to this disease. And I hope to just see that in the future. And I think, like many other things, like, representation of different races, I think we're getting there, and it's getting better and better.
Yeah, I think representation helps a lot, because that helps with people's curiosity, and naturally people want to explore more, and then finally include it as part, if they're a creator, tell that side of the story more. And I think because that hasn't happened that much, it's slowly happening. If we look at, a longer timeline, I hope that this momentum continues, right? So during COVID, right, a lot of people are living with social isolation, right? And it is a complete slap in the face on, wow, I thought I could just rely on Facebook and Twitter all day. I guess not. Like I'm finding myself picking up the phone, talking to people again. Didn't know that was what it's for. And a lot of people are discovering what a phone used to be like.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, I'm also discovering how time away from the phone has been really helpful with my mental health. And people are kind of forced to think differently now. And I think a lot of that has to do with the improvement with recognizing disability and accessibility with games, especially with movies. Like that's why I feel like the two industry is kind of like the main topic right now, because people are mainly doing that. And I think in the main, maybe next month or so, people are rediscovering board games again. But with this social isolation, you're playing with the same two people, so that gets boring real quick. beating my 10-year-old isn't so fun every time. So it seems like digital is the long-term solution to get us out of this. What are you seeing from that perspective, from a journalistic perspective, of what people are turning to and what can be improved to kind of help? Because even digital, there's an oversaturation of like, man, I'm moving from my phone to the computer to the TV. I'm like, I'm getting so much screen time now, because that's, outside of, and in California, for example, we had wildfires where we were like really have to dig in to stay in the house and not even breathe outside. And so that was a hard 2 weeks, at least on a personal level. Like this, we're really being tested this year. And if anything, digital outlet seems to be here to stay for a while.
Yeah, we're definitely turning to screens. And I feel like whether we like it or not, our screen time has increased. And I know for me, like I start getting a little bit lightheaded if, I look at a screen all day, and I stop looking at the screen and I go to the couch and watch TV. And so that isn't helping any at all. But I think, like you said earlier, this is a great time for video games because people are realizing the potential to be able to connect online to however far away you are from each other. And I think you look at the games that are coming out, you got Fall Guys and Among Us, games that are very specifically focused on like the party aspect, like bringing people together rather than like Call of Duty, because not everyone can play Call of Duty. It's something that I'm only good at because I've been playing it for so long, but other people, can't necessarily keep up. So those games have been coming into fruition. And then there's this whole idea of the metaverse. And this is something that a reporter I worked with at the Washington Post, Gene Park, has explored. And in Fortnite specifically, where people are in their Fortnite character, but they're also seeing like a Marshmallow concert, or they're watching a trailer for The Rise of Skywalker or Tenet. So we see it just becoming so pervasive in our lives, and we see the video game industry taking advantage of that and becoming that. I guess if you look at Ready Player One, it's kind of that environment. Or if you look at Snow Crash, for example, a book that a lot of people like to cite with the metaverse and how you have a second life in the online space. And I think that that's a great thing, especially for now, but it can also be dangerous and cause us to forget who we are as people.
Yeah, the danger with online communities, like that, turning that second life into first life, right? So the technology isn't there yet where we're opting in to be completely enthralled, but we're basically one Facebook Oculus away. I think, after the next one, they're going to be bridging the gap to a point where like virtual reality is pretty cool. Right. Yeah. So like these technology companies are definitely taking advantage, and they have to. And in a way, it's not so bad because there's really nothing to do. Right. You can't really go outside. Like even if you do go outside, there's a lot of people walking without masks because it's so politicized in the US. It's unsafe. So it's the safest thing is to stay at home and be somewhat, comfortable with that until this kind of blows over. It's the 100% fail-proof plan for everybody right now. Is just stay home and make your house comfortable. The digital outlet thing is scary because I'm like 6 months. Thank God I don't have to wear glasses, But I'm even at this point, man, I'm staring at the screen way more than I've ever done before. And this is coming from a digital artist, right? And I play games a lot. And I'm feeling like it's taken like 5 years from my eye health away. And I don't know how long I should be doing that. But you talked a bit about your somewhat pretty professional gaming career, right? So you're a Twitch streamer as well. You have your own community. You're attending a Call of Duty Warzone tournament already, or will be soon.
Well, so I'm taking a little bit of break from Twitch. I might come back. It was just a lot to balance between doing my journalism and games and then doing Twitch. But I did participate in a Warzone tournament with a few other streamers that I was connected with through this online community called Pipeline. And we participated in a Warzone tournament back in February, I think. So it's been a while now, shortly after that game mode came out. And what was great about that was, we didn't necessarily do well. I think we got 5th place or something like that. But it was a great opportunity to build a friendship with someone that I hadn't met at all in real life, and to be competitive. And for me in Call of Duty, a lot of my friends don't play that game. And so it was nice to have people that really, in that community, that loved the game as well and understood the game and how it worked, and were willing to like play to what I was doing and help each other. And so that overall was a great experience.
Yeah, I mean that whole universe, right? I mean, we're taping this podcast in my apartment, but like it's still quite new. Like it's an arm that just grew like just a few years ago, but exploded in a way where it's like dominant of what the game industry is about, right? Streaming, connecting with the community. It's a lot where games are now kind of gearing and accommodating streaming as part of how they design games. Like, and if you can kind of like share that side of it, because you have a lot more experience than probably a lot of our listeners on the stream part, the tournaments even, give more insight about how that is becoming even bigger especially during COVID. During COVID, after COVID, what are you seeing with that part of the industry going?
I think streaming has almost become like a bigger part of the video game industry than the games themselves, because you have people like Ninja, you have people like Dr. Disrespect, people like Nick Merckx drawing in, hundreds and thousands of live viewers. And one, it helps, them grow as a person and build their community, but it also helps the games that they're streaming, because people are like, oh, that looks cool. Like he's having a lot of fun playing this game. Let me buy this game for myself and do this. And you look at Ubisoft with Hyperscape. They really were aiming to make that Twitch specific. And, the viewers on watching a stream of Hyperscape could give the streamer whatever power up they wanted. And so they would troll like the streamers and give anti-gravity to them, and it would be really hard to move around the map, and they would get really frustrated with that. But that was a way for the audience to contribute. It didn't alter the gameplay too much, and it shouldn't, but it was an opportunity for more involvement with that community. And people that aren't able to afford game systems or a PC or a gaming PC can still participate in a way without having to actually play. And to me, that's very interesting, because normally people were already playing the game, but now it's expanded beyond, even people that would traditionally play video games. And now they're just watching it for entertainment like anything else.
Yeah, that's a very interesting perspective. Like the third player option, involving the stadium. If this is a gladiator game, right, the stadium has some kind of influence on the players. Mm-hmm. That don't necessarily have a copy of the game, but they're maybe connecting on a web base, right? It's a lot like what I've kind of talked about before with VR, where, the one with the headset always has the most fun, right? But then there's party modes now where people can tune in with their smartphone and stuff. I see a very similar thing with Twitch streaming, where people are like going crazy in chat because it's all they can do, right? Emoticons, which is insane, right? Because it's like, wow, people pay for this, for emoticons, right? Well, of course, it's the only thing they can do. But people want eventually to have some kind of participation in
Right.
with the streamer, with the game, playing with the game. That's why the Stadia stuff with the YouTube stuff sounds very interesting, but they're not quite there yet, right? Because they have problems. But that is a huge step. Yeah, that's a huge step that I see the next 5 years, where participants or viewers are going to progress past just being viewers, and that needs to happen, I think, because the jig is up. I think eventually, where it's like, wow, I'm just only watching.
I mean, people are eventually going to get bored of just spamming emotes in Twitch, and they're going to want more interaction. And I think that's what streamers are trying to do with, if you subscribe, like you get special benefits, like, you get a personal video, or you can, play with me. But that gets hard if you have a lot of viewers, but generally that's the direction that they're trying to go. And another game I just thought of was Jackbox, where if someone's streaming the game, you can join the room as an audience, and you can also vote for your favorite, lie that they tell in Quiplash or something like that.
Oh wow, yeah, that's huge. Yeah, that's why I think the same way that the game studios need to be more diverse, including more people, especially if you're building a game for people with disabilities. You're going to have someone on your team that have a disability to cater to that group. You can't guess. Same things if you're writing a story with different races, right? You can't be one race and then start sharing experience because you read a book on it, right? You're going to have that. It's one of the aching points with the game studios, where they're starting to incorporate more diversity within the workplace. But I think we're kind of slow on that, because the priority still becomes like shipping this game on time. Everything keeps falling by and it's as the game are getting bigger, it becomes more of an issue, because the team hasn't grown in the next generation, which is one of the scary parts of what next generation looks like.
Yeah, I think there's a huge focus to, like you said, try to get the game out the door. And that was something with Red Dead Redemption that you probably read about, with Jason Schreier's investigation about how, they would just overwork game developers, and you could probably speak to that. And they're so focused on getting the game out the door that they don't recognize these things. I will say that one game that has done a great job is Apex Legends. They have a very diverse group of characters. I think League of Legends has continued to do a better job of that. And the nice thing about these games is they can continue to add characters. It's not like, especially games as a service, like you can continue to add stuff as you update the game and kind of work backwards on that. So it's not completely over with once the game comes out.
Yeah, a lot of the games that are moving towards the patching and the free to play model are better situated for the future. A lot of games now that are shutting down or having layoffs or crunching are the games that are used to the old model, where teams used to be like smaller, 50 people, where selling 1 million used to be awesome, right? But now you got to sell 8 million to break even. So a lot of that is just the old way of thinking, and which is great, because one of the benefits of the industry moving forward is that they're learning from other parts of the industry, like streaming, accommodating more streamers, accommodating more people watching the game more so than playing the game. Other parts are like the mobile industry. Although they're fast and they throw out and you can be number 1 and then number 10 the next day, they're frequently updating their game. And that's where the free-to-play model from AAA games like Fortnite, Apex Legends are learning from the mobile industry, because a lot of the mobile industry are made up of people that work in AAA games before, and they just like looked at the product and like, hey, we can think of a better way of selling these things. And that's why they're doing a lot better, in my opinion, and kind of separately from AAA. And AAA now are learning from that side. So the industry is great and forward thinking when money is involved. So like the main catalyst for change has always been about money. So like being more inclusive, a lot of that is money driven. It's like there's more players out here, so we should be more inclusive. Yeah, it's like that's how they think, right?
Yeah, I guess, and that isn't a problem if they're like if they're evolving their product, if they're adding more voices in, because if I'm playing a game and I see someone in a wheelchair, like that makes me pretty excited. And it goes for any type of community that you're looking at, Latino, colored community. If they see that, they're more inspired to play that game, and it gets them more excited, especially LGBT. When you look at The Last of Us and Dina, and Ellie's character. And so, yeah, I think money can be a driver for good, but that doesn't necessarily always happen. And there's obviously exceptions to that rule. But again, I think you want different types of people, because that means more people are going to play the game, thus giving you more revenue. So it kind of does make sense. But again, there are exceptions to that.
Mm-hmm. And let's go back to how your journalistic career started, right? That's another part of the game industry where, I mean, I'm technically a broadcaster, but I don't consider myself at all being a journalist or anything close to that. I'm game developer first, and I'm learning as I'm going, right? So can you kind of talk about that side? Because that part of the industry changed a lot too in the last 5-10 years, where it was pretty dominant in game sales, right? A lot of influence, but the other half of you, the streamer, kind of took over that side of the business where you have a lot more influence on what people buy. Can you kind of talk about how you got in and what you've seen on that side and how things have changed?
I think video game journalism has really evolved with the industry. I think it's gotten more mature. It's gone from people that are like community journalists, like fans of games, just going off of what update, like what patches are coming out, and then analyzing that, and then making YouTube videos. And there's also journalists that stream and talk about their process and interview other people on their stream, similar to what we're doing right now. And there's been a lot more investigative reporting in journalism. I mentioned Jason Schreier. He's been a pretty big force in that. He's at Bloomberg right now. He was formerly at Kotaku. And I think game industry, at least PR agencies and executives, are kind of a bit worried about that from my perspective, because people are now like looking at the video game industry, and a lot of it is opaque, and you don't know really what's going on behind the scenes. And people really want to find that out because they want to play a game that they have trust in, that aligns with their values.
Yeah, I think that's one. I think you nailed it right there. The game industry is immature in a way, and it's very privatized compared to the movie industry, right? I've talked about this many times, where the movie industry, they're well, not now, right? The box office sucks right now. No one's watching movies, but like they're very good at finding out of what movie generally does well, what month, right? Games don't really have that data. I mean, it used to be Steam Spy, right, unofficially, but now it's very hard to tell like what game is really good, what's responding and what time of the year. All that information I think is very important to be transparent on, because then we can move the industry forward. I think if anything, it's slowing the industry down, where we're not sharing that type of data because it's competitive data. I think as an industry, it's holding us back, because a lot of this stuff would be highlighted very quickly with diversity, the number of players that kind of are attracted to a certain genre. I mean, these are type of things that within a publisher they know, but there's no grand global metric here that we can use as developers, as gamers, as journalists. It's like there's no common ground here where we all can meet with each other. We're very separate and segregated, and that doesn't seem to be a good thing ever.
No, it doesn't.
For business, even though they're doing it for business, which is a very odd way of thinking. I don't know. I guess from the other side of the fence, how do you see this playing out? Like, are we going to ever be open about this, or do you see this continuously being closed off?
I think it'll get better eventually. And, talking about how many people are playing per month, I think Twitch is a pretty good metric. How many people are watching this particular game? Like, what are the top charts? I think that's pretty indicative of what's going on, what people are interested in. But again, like there isn't a lot of information shared. I think video game publishers are very hesitant to work with journalists. They're uh, I hate to say afraid of them. Like they're going to somehow push a narrative that is negative towards them. But that's really not what our job is. Our job is just to report what's going on and give information to people. And it's for people to decide what they want to do with that. I think there's that fear that we're going to paint them as like evil, capitalist monsters or something like that. But we're really just here to give information to people and bridge that gap that isn't there right now.
Well, Game Dev Unchained is definitely to highlight the monsters. I think that's the whole show. But like on the journalist side, you guys are there to be just reporting what's going on, right? To be nonpartisan as best as possible, which is the type of news that we miss in all type of news. It's like it's too opinionated now, where it's hard to know what's the truth. But yeah, it is funny because it's kind of happening. I think Rotten Tomatoes for a while. I think now everybody's kind of like more acquainted with Rotten Tomatoes and embrace it now, especially if you have favorable reviews. But a lot of movie companies, it seems like they fear Rotten Tomatoes to the point of like trying to like budget a bit to favorable reviews, because it is kind of translating sometimes, right? Not always, because we do see movies that have poor ratings from the critics' view, and then amazing audience rating, and they do super well, right? So it is a kind of understandable fear, I guess, from the publisher, thinking that somehow this is going to completely demolish their game that they're about to release. But at the same time, it's like, well, I mean, the data shows that people are going to play whatever game they want to play, and they're just looking at, what's out there available to kind of make their decision. And it's better that way, I think. In the end, it's like, if you're trying to set themselves up for disappointment, where you have a gotcha moment, you got your $60 and you run away with it knowing that it's a shit product, right? That's never going to be good for your brand. It's never going to be good for future games. It's going to hurt your, eventually, because they're going to pop it in and it sucks, right? So I don't think the bigger picture here, being more inclusive, being more open, I think you're right. Like that relationship between a journalist and game development, or publishers in particular, have kind of been diminished. And it's unfortunate, because even though I love streamers, they're not, I don't know. I guess in a way it's cool to kind of see the game, but there are cons to that side too, where there's only certain types of games that actually translate to sales. Single player experience is completely out the window. Once you see the game from front to finish, you're not really where you go to play the game and be.
Why am I going to pay $60 if I've already seen
watch
like
the game again?
Yeah.
So there's genre games that have to adapt, to evolve. It is the way it is. So those games, which I grew up loving, right? Because it's like a book, right? Where I'm learning as the character goes. And I do kind of miss that to some respect. And less of those games are being made. But it's just a different time. And you can't stop streamers from streaming. I mean,
yeah.
What's your perspective of that? Like just the pros and cons?
Yeah. I mean, if you're looking at like a single player story-based game, I mean, my perspective is, if I'm interested in playing it, I'm not going to watch someone else play it. I mean, for, something like Star Wars Squadrons that recently came out, like I didn't want to see I wanted it to be a whole new experience. And I guess maybe some people don't have that discipline to wait until the game comes out to see it. And then there's the other thing, is that a lot of people are seeing it that wouldn't normally buy the game. So it does I get more press to the issue. I think I understand why some publishers wouldn't are worried about things getting spoiled, by journalists talking to them. But the majority, at least if you're covering games, you should be a gamer in some sense, and you should understand, okay, like there's a reason why they can't share the whole story at once, and you have to respect that. And I think there's ways to even talk about the development process behind a game, which I think you're trying to eliminate, is very interesting. At least for me, I am not a programmer or a very good artist, but I could still appreciate the amount of work and effort that goes into making these games. And you don't have to reveal any story. It's really, the business and industry behind it. And so I think there has to be trust on both sides, right? The trust from the game publishers that journalists aren't going to ruin the game for someone by reviewing it and giving all the spoilers. And journalists also have to trust game publishers to work with them and to get information from them. And it's a two-way street.
Yeah, I think any way that we can bridge the gap between these relationships, it makes our industry a little better. That's why I feel like other entertainment industry, like the movies, are, even though they're unionized and there are their own separate groups and niches, I feel like they're better connected and they're growing every year. I mean, Netflix is Netflix for a reason. We just don't have that on our side. And I feel it's holding us back in a huge way. Just internally, like, there's a distinct group between mobile games and AAA and indie. I mean, these are three separate groups that never talk to each other. And I think it's insane. And in a very much same way, the media side of it, the journalists, the streamer, are very much their own. Every streamer is their own. Within that group is like their own. I mean, they partner up and they're doing what they need to do, which is smart. We have all these different avenues to promote what we all love, which is games, but we're not working together to better this industry. And people are kind of discovering it on their own, luckily, to kind of keep this industry going. But I think we can be much bigger if we have like this somewhat singular voice of, I don't know. I keep relating it back to the arcade. It's like you go to the arcade, that feels like the closest thing to like, wow, we're all in this together. But those days are long gone, unfortunately. And people are kind of fending for themselves. And I think a lot of the lessons, the result of that is a lot of studio shutdowns, a lot of indie developers who are really well equipped with talented developers are not having a long enough chance to sustain themselves to come out with that masterpiece that we're kind of used to during the PS2 days, right? I felt like the PS2 era had like hits after hits after hits from these small companies. And because it was manageable, it was supported, and it was a lot easier to kind of have an avenue to kind of publish them. Now that it's so big, these similar sized groups are not having that chance. And we've had so many people talk about funding, so many people publish. There's so many different ways of doing these things that they don't have like this internet hub where they can go. It's like, all right, you have a great idea. Let's go through this. Let me show you the way. It's very weird. It's very odd, man, that we're so segregated in everything that we're doing. And I don't know. I hope that's a weird side effect of this. Oops, my bad. My camera just went dead. This is a weird side effect where the pandemic is sidetracking us, but at the same time focusing us back into these things that should matter, right? Being more inclusive. So with that, I want to ask you, because this is something where even myself, I'm going through, like the social isolation part of it, right? Endless screen time, and people are not equipped to this. They don't know how. They're learning as they're going, and I feel like a lot of people are not are not able to kind of figure this out on their own, right? And the crazy thing is, we're in times like this, we always look for, government to kind of help us out on this, but like very little is kind of shared about how to take care of yourself during this time, right? It's all financial right now. What advice do you have from personal experience, what you've seen through friends and family, what they're doing, where you're like, hey, don't do that. Eventually you're going to go crazy. Don't hold on to trying to recreate your life in this time, right? That's to me, what I've seen a lot. It's like they're trying to hold on what they had before and stay normal. It's like, no, man, you got to change everything. Everything has to change during this time to survive. What do you, what's your opinion on this?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways that we can enjoy our screen time, enjoy our online time together without it being detrimental to our health. I think one interesting documentary I watched, which you're probably familiar with, The Social Dilemma. And one piece of advice that they have for that is just turn off notifications on all social media, because that, and most of the notifications aren't even related to you. It's like, oh, look who this person hasn't posted in a while. This is what, and so
Right.
it kind of forces you to stay on your phone as much as possible, and it forces these companies to get as much data as possible on you. So that's one thing that's helped me. I think another thing is not using electronics. I mean, like an hour to 2 hours before you go to bed. Usually my video game time is at night, and I'm actually living with my parents right now, and they're like, why don't you just try like not, playing right before you go to bed? Because, and it really does make sense when you think about it. If I'm getting sweaty playing Call of Duty, and like my heart rate is up and I'm all, into it and excited about it, then I'm going to have trouble falling asleep. And that is going to in turn have a negative effect, because we're not as healthy when we're not getting enough sleep. And so I think we have to change our habits around a little bit, and be more disciplined, because it's a lot easier now than like if you're in an office or, out about reporting. It's a lot harder now to have those boundaries. So you really have to implement those on your own. There's plenty of apps that you can, I think freedom.io is one that I'm using, where you can set it to, block off these websites, these apps, these video games for a certain period of time. And then you can't use them at all. And so it forces you to do, the work that you need to do. And then that isn't to say that we can't, have fun online and play video games, but you can't let that be the only thing you do. And you have to, branch out and be productive, and not let, this coronavirus control how you live.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely a huge part of it for sure. Yeah, I think it's crazy, right? There's a weird balance that you're like, use social media as a way to connect people, but don't use it too much because it's gonna hurt you. And that frequent balance, and just like, well, when you're not doing that, go outside, but don't get near people, because that's not good either. It's so crazy. It's so hard. But I think there isn't any other scenario where people will take that seriously until now, where people are living with the consequences of too much screen time in a forceful way, to recognize like, wow, this is way bigger than an issue than I thought, because now that they don't have any other escape or distractions, they're finally like, I keep saying that this is like a 5-year flash forward for all types of relationship, right? With people, with phone, if you're living with your parents, if you're living with a significant other, or with your kids, right? This is like a flash forward of what 5 years of experience would be in like 6 months, and you'll figure out and highlight all the problems that you've had, that you've been kind of like sweeping under the rug. So your issue with your devices, now it's like, this is what it looks like if you keep doing this for 5 years. So in a way, it's a sort of a blessing, is like, figure this stuff out and make your life better right now, because you have to. And yeah, it's a thing in the back of my mind that I've been like, for us, we're very dependent on social media. We're very dependent. We need to for our business and what we do online, right? But yeah, there are moments where you can take breaks and do it in a healthy way, like you said, an hour or two before sleep, just being away from it all. And you're starting to hear people who are completely unplugging, and it's kind of like scary to hear that, like, it's like the air being cleared of smog, right? They're like infinitely not happy. It's like, wow, is it that bad? Where if I spend a day away, where my serotonin just elevates that much, it's like that's scary, man. Maybe that's why Steve Jobs didn't let his kids be on the iPad and stuff, knowingly, that this is what the future holds.
And I think there's also responsibility from video game companies to they are knowingly or not creating something that's highly addictive. And so, letting people know, okay, like these are tips for not playing too many video games and letting it get in the way of your life. Spend, make a schedule and, allow yourself 1 hour of video games per day, or like something where you're rewarding players for not playing as much. If that makes sense. You can get this weapon skin if you're off for this amount of time. Obviously, that that probably doesn't make sense in a lot of cases, but if you're showing that you care about the health of the people that you're marketing your game to, I think that improves a lot of that trust that we were talking about, and that can go a long way.
Yeah, I think the last time I saw something that happened was not a Western company, it was the Eastern company. Like Nintendo did something like that with their Switch, where I was playing for a few hours and then it popped up. It's like, hey, maybe you should rest. I was like, what is this? How dare you? But it totally makes sense for game companies to recognize. And it's funny that you say the highly addictive, that's part of the design now. It used to be casinos in Las Vegas hiring game designers to figure that part out. Now it's vice versa, since we're like becoming more profitable than the casinos, that those designers are coming back to study like addictive behaviors and recreating that in Call of Duty, in all these shooters, and all these like free to play games as part of design. And it's it's scary because now it's a technology not a lot of people understand. Obviously, government is always like 10 years behind of what's working right now or what's happening. It took them a while to kind of nip the loot boxes in the bud for a while. 5 years EA doing that, and they finally realized, hey man, you're charging people for like mystery boxes. And so in the very much same way, now that these games are asking for more attention, more time, I think it's going to be a couple of years where they figure out, maybe after the pandemic, it's like, man, people are just stuck to your games. I am curious about that. I don't think it's that crazy. I think people are kind of aching for going outside. So when that is being lifted, I mean, we're seeing it right now, right? This is the pandemic, but people are like, well, I'll take my chances. Like, what? It's been 100 years since the pandemic happened. And this is the time of anything to hold down in the house and be safe. And people can't take it anymore. So you see people just walking around. So I can't blame them. And so I think it won't be that bad where people are so addicted to their devices where we have to pry them away from their stuff. But it's the little killers that, like you said, like people are just those little things where you're checking notifications where you think it's harmless, but you end up spending like 8 hours plus in front of your phone. I think those are the ones that are the sneaky designs for games as well that they build into, because they somewhat have a moral compass. That's how they justify it, right? The designers for these things, it's just a few hours a day. I don't want them to be on there all day, but that's how we justify it, I think, in a lot of these situations to make it better.
Yeah, and I'm glad the loot boxes are kind of a thing of the past right now. I know I'm a big Star Wars fan, so when the remake of Star Wars Battlefront came out, and I saw that whole controversy, I personally didn't play it enough to get too upset about it. I was just playing my game. I was just excited that it was a Star Wars game, that was a shooter. But if you really looked at what the loot box system is, it's essentially gambling, and I think they still have that here and there where it's like, okay, you pay like $20 to get like an epic box. It might be like the low end of the epic box, or it might be really good, and the guns you get might be in the meta, or they might not be, or they might help you a lot. So there's that gambling part of it. I think you see that a lot in phone apps. I think mobile games are kind of the first people to do that. With buying more lives and Candy Crush and things to that extent to keep you playing as long as possible, and then also make money at the same time. And you talk about players that are whales that'll no problem buy a $20 bundle on Clash of Clans and keep doing it over and over again.
Yeah, I briefly worked at a mobile company, and I think one of the players, and this was like a mobile company that was doing all right, right? I think pretty good, right? But not like Clash of Clans. So I can only imagine how much they were. But they were saying like one of their best customer has spent like $100,000 already. This is a 2-year game, but that's what like we as developers, internally we're like, that's crazy, right? But like the decision makers at the company's like, we need to recreate that. It's like, why do we want people promote? We can promote choice, of course. It's their money; they want to do whatever they want. But there is kind of like a line there where it's like, all right, we can't actively brainwash them into, I don't know. There's a moral side of that where it's always tricky. I think it always in the end hurt us because you can either milk the cow too much where they're completely depleted and they will never come back to gaming, which is the fast way of doing things. And a lot of developers do that, right? To get the money now. But like, I always favor sustainability. I want these players to come back 10, 20 years. And I do, in a weird way, like being on the game developer side, I know more game developers don't play games than they actually play games now. And a lot of it is not, I don't think it's partially because of how the industry is going, but a lot of it's, the kids and family too. But I think because how complicated things have gotten too, where you're going to have to jump through. And I think a lot of it too, we know how the sausage is made. So it's like, it kind of like, we're always analyzing when we're playing through games. We don't enjoy it as much, but
yeah, that makes sense. Like I know Hideo Kojima. I think he was behind Death Stranding, but he's someone that doesn't play video games at all, really. And so you're definitely right talking about that. I think even like the adventures of Mario, for example, they don't really play video games at all. They're more focused on creating that experience, but they're more interested in doing that than actually, getting the reward of playing the game, it seems like.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things where I think, at least speaking for myself, it becomes pretty dangerous. Like if the reason why you got into making games isn't the reason why you're making games anymore, I think that lends to a lot of burnout for developers where they're like so detached from what they're doing. So like I've never had to do this before where I had to schedule my game time where I'm like forcing myself to play like an hour or two a day to kind of reinvigorate that kid inside me that wanted to get in the industry in the first place. And I know a lot of developers that don't do that and they just burn out and they just do other things outside of games, and it's a paycheck to them. So I don't know, to connect it back to why we're doing all this. I feel the community's being so disconnected kind of is kind of doing that to themselves, right? Because we're so disconnected, we're slowly forgetting why games are being made and why they're being enjoyed, and it becomes too much about the business. And that becomes, more realistically, people are kind of like, what would you say? Kind of giving that up a bit, right? They're less about the players and more about just making the money. So I think a lot of that, what we're talking about being more inclusive and diversity, we don't go back to that kid inside of us who wanted to be in the industry in the first place. We just become that mean old guy who just wants to collect money and call it a day, man. I don't know what it is, but it seems to be that way in the simplest of terms, in my point of view.
Yeah. And I mean, it helps you make money too, right? I mean, you want to have something that's sustainable. You want to have something that people enjoy playing. And I think that's the key word, is sustainability. Like we want to have as many different types of voices as possible in our games to include as many people as possible, like people with disabilities, for example. I think, and then just focusing on, let the game speak for itself. Don't feel like you need to add all of this on top of it. If it's a great game to start with, you don't need to add all these, in-app purchases. Just let the game be the way it is. And it's interesting you brought up scheduling time to play video games as well. I think that that's some of the struggle I have, writing about video games and also playing them and esports. Is it going to be like, am I going to stop enjoying them? But I don't think that's the case. And especially with me as a journalist, I should be playing as many different types of games as possible. So I think that's a wake up call for me to broaden my horizons as well and to enjoy different things and new things.
Well, I'm right there with you. Let's start a movement. Play more games,
Yeah,
but
honestly,
not too much screen time.
Honestly, just make it a schedule. Like, okay, I'm going to play, God of War on Monday, then Tuesday, Call of Duty, then, Fall Guys on Wednesday, and I think that makes all of us sane because you worked on Call of Duty, but sometimes in Call of Duty, you get in a cycle where you keep losing and you get progressively more mad at the game and other people, and you just want to play more. And it kind of gets into like a little bit of a hateful cycle, and you just get so upset at the game. And it's nothing, it's more about you than the game, but sometimes it's nice to take a break and look at other things. Like, for example, I would only read Star Wars books when I was little, but my parents forced me to do Battle of the Books, where I read a bunch of different types of books and broadened my horizons. And I think if people in the industry do that, I think we'd come up with some great ideas, and I think it would just be more sustainable as a whole.
Yeah. I think, exactly what you said. We got to reach outside of our comfort zone. Hire people that are not like us. Talk to people who are not like us. It shows, right, in other ways that just improves quality of life for everybody. And I want to thank you. We are at the hour mark for coming on the podcast and broadening my horizon, and giving more insight of what a real journalist does. And this is the time where I actually hand the mic over to you to give attention to, give a shout out, anything you want to talk about.
Yeah, obviously where my heart is at is with Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy. And my parents actually started a foundation when I was diagnosed when I was 5 years old called Cure Duchenne, CUREDUCHENNE, and that's .org. And you can find out more information there and raise money for research. And something related to video games that we're doing is we're hosting a Rocket Lab. I keep saying Rocket Lab. I mean Rocket League. It's kind of like a Rocket Lab. I mean, the rocket cars. Yeah. But we're hosting a Rocket League tournament with guys that have Duchenne and friends and family on October 10th. So that'll be fun. That'll be on Twitch. You can check us out there, support some guys with Duchenne and see how we interact when we game. And like I said earlier, it's been great for me to meet new people that have Duchenne and to be able to talk to them about the same issues. And so I think gaming is great for that. And it's been great for me to be competitive, like I said earlier, and to connect with those types of people. So that's kind of what we're doing in partnership with PTC, which is a pharmaceutical company developing treatments for Duchenne. And so we're going to host that tournament, raise money for Cure Duchenne, and really bring awareness. I think is the main goal of it. Is to a lot of people don't know Duchenne. What is that? So we're trying to bridge that knowledge gap as well. And then I'm also going to be starting a channel where I talk to game developers, not unlike right here, but it'll be called Dev Talks, and I'll be reaching out to the game developers, talking to them, interviewing them, and then playing their games with them at the same time. So that should be a fun thing. And when I get started on Twitch, definitely follow me there again. And on Twitter is the best place to find me.
All right, man. And I know you're being around Bush. Of course, I'll be on the show.
Yeah, let's do it,
buddy. Yeah, let's do it. But yeah, thank you for all your work, man. For sharing your story, raising awareness, and sharing the knowledge, man. Because I'm like the old guy, dude. Like, what is the streaming thing? What are these kids doing?
I think streaming personally is like a whole other beat to cover for journalists.
Yeah, it's so crazy, man. And it's not. I don't even think it's. As Dr. Disrespect puts it, it's not the peak of the mountain yet. Like, it's so much more to it. Funny enough, man, I work with them. Like, we were buddies on Call of Duty.
Yeah, Advanced Warfare, right?
Yeah, Advanced Warfare, yeah. So to see his success has been Awesome. No, I'm kidding. No, we were good buddies. I mean, he always had that personality before he started, so he just ran with it. But it's one of those things where he kept paying attention, like you said, right? Everybody in this industry is so focused in getting to their next thing, where in his case, he was able to kind of survey what was going on with streaming and made that move and succeeded in a huge way, took advantage of what was going on. And I think as long as we're not tunnel vision, every industry being connected, we can really move on to the next step and evolve as an industry as a whole, right?
Definitely.
Which is the next major thing. Well, I want to thank you for coming on, man. Welcome to my apartment and all that. And I want to wish you the best, dude.
Yeah, you too, Brandon. Good talking with you.
Talking to you. Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good one.